Hare Rama, Rama Srimad-Bhagavatam. All glories to your soul devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Indirā Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Aschatya Vishatani Kalpatarvyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha adhikam Avanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopyaḥ Gopyaḥ Radha Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hariye. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Charanarottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayesha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. We're reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 31, the Gopis Songs of Separation, verse number 1.
今日我哋一齊閱讀聖典課家雅談第10篇第31章，牧牛姑娘抒發離愁別緒的歌第1節詩。
So we're entering into the inner circle of the Rasa Lila Katha.
咁我哋咧今日咧一齊咧去到進入呢一個Rasa 嘅逍遙時光裏面嘅內圈，喺呢個5章裏面嘅呢個內圈嘅部分。
Rasa Lila Katha.
Rasa Lila Katha.
Adhyaya means chapter.
Adhyaya 嘅意思即係咧章嘅意思。
Pancha means 5.
咁係 Pancha Adhyaya。
Pancha means 5.
Pancha 嘅意思咧就係5。
And Pancha Adhyaya means 5 chapters.
咁 Pancha Adhyaya 嘅意思咧就係5章。
So 5 chapters of the Rasa Lila.
咁呢個 Rasa 嘅逍遙時光咧，一共有5章。
Also, I've been mentioning the idea from my godbrother Garuda Prabhu, who wrote a very nice book just on this subject, including his own translation. He says this is like a 5-act drama.
咁我嘅神兄弟啦 ，Garuda Prabhu 咧，佢寫咗一本書啦，專係咧係去到描述咧呢5個章節嘅。咁裏面咧有佢自己嘅翻譯啦。咁佢講到咧呢5章咧就好似咧5幕戲咁樣。
And within the acts there are also subsections or scenes, we could say in English.
咁每一幕戲裏邊咧再分做咧唔同嘅細嘅幕。
You have this in Chinese traditional drama. You have acts and scenes.
咁有冇喺我哋中國戲劇裏面係咪講一場景？場景。
So this is the third act out of the 5 acts.
咁咧呢一章咧所講咧就係5幕戲裏面咧第3幕。
Which puts it in the middle of the drama.
咁其實咧係整出戲咧嘅中間嘅部分。
And as the middle of the drama, you can say it's the most important part.
咁我哋可以話咧呢一部分咧係整出戲嘅中間嘅部分咧，都係最重要嘅部分嚟。
And it's important in its especially expression of emotions.
咁尤其是咧係呢一個情感嘅表達。
Of course, the whole Rasa Panchadhyaya is about the rasa of madhurya.
咁其實咧呢5章裏面咧呢個 Panchadhyaya 其實咧都係講緊呢一個嘅愛侶嘅關係 madhurya 嘅關係。
And we understand from our Gaudiya acharyas, especially from Rupa Goswami, that madhurya rasa is the highest.
咁喺我哋嘅師徒傳承裏面咧，根據 Rupa Goswami 啦，我哋明白到咧呢個 madhurya 嘅呢個愛侶嘅關係咧係最高嘅。
Highest. Also, it is referred to as Adi Rasa, the original rasa.
佢亦都係咧被指稱咧係呢一個 Adi Rasa 係最原初嘅呢一個嘅關係。
And it's explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita that in what sense it's highest? Well, one way to understand it includes all the other rasas.
咁所以根據永恆的主宰太經裏面咧，去到講到咧，其實呢一個嘅關係咧，其實已經包含咧其他所有嘅關係。
This chapter is important because it's a song or a series of songs.
咁呢一章重要嘅地方咧，就係咧，其實咧佢係一連串一首歌嚟嘅。
And they're expressing the mood of separation.
咁黃姑娘咧係去到咧表達咧佢哋嗰種離愁別緒嘅嗰種嘅情感。
Sometimes called vipralamba.
咁 咁有時被稱為 vipalamma。
And also viraha. There's some technical differences, but that's the general idea, the mood of separation.
咁所以整體嚟講咧，就係充滿住呢一種嘅分離之情。
And of all the moods within Madhurya, this mood of separation in our tradition is considered the highest.
咁喺Madhurya 呢一個愛侶嘅關係裏面咧，呢一種嘅情感啦，其實係喺呢個愛侶關係裏面咧，又係屬於最高嘅。
And so it's the highest, it's the sweetest.
咁所以係最崇高嘅，而且咧係最甜美嘅。
We may say it's the most intimate also.
亦都係最親密嘅。
And the question arises, who has the adhikara, the qualification, either to speak about this or to hear about it?
咁所以出現咗一個問題，就係邊個先至有資格去到講述啦，甚至係聆聽咧呢一啲嘅內容。
So we may not have so much adhikar, but we take shelter of our acharyas, especially Srimad-Bhagavatam.
咁我哋可能未必有呢一個嘅資格啦，但係咧我哋係託庇於我哋嘅靈性嘅先師啦，尤其是係聖哈學他。
And we try to take drops of nectar from their teachings.
我哋希望咧從佢哋嘅教導裏面咧，能夠咧去到獲取一滴嘅呢個甘露。
The 5 chapters, as I've said, can be considered as a drama, but in this chapter, there's no action. They're just, at the end of the last chapter, it describes they come to the bank of the gopīs come to the bank of the Yamuna, they sit down, and what do? They sing.
咁喺呢一章裏面咧，同其他幾幕啦唔同嘅地方咧，就係呢一幕咧，其實佢冇好多動作嘅，其實佢哋就係去到janmanā河旁邊啦，然之後坐喺度啦，跟住就開始歌唱啦。
There's no external action, but you can say there's a lot of internal action.
咁所以外在冇話好多嘅行動啊，或者動作咁樣，但係其實咧內在咧係好多嘅內在嘅呢啲嘅行動。
And the gopīs are expressing this turmoil in their emotions as they feel this separation from Krishna, and they plead with Krishna to appear.
咁所以佢哋當時感受住同 Krishna 呢一種嘅分離之情啦，然之後咧係去到乞求咧 Krishna 咧再去到出現。
And so it's a kind of interlude. You know the word interlude. Interlude. It's a kind of it stops the action, and then there's it's a kind of break.
咁就可以係一個中場喘息。
But this interlude is it's not just for okay, now we can relax, now we can space out. No, this is where the real nectar is.
咁所以呢個中場嘅休息咧，並唔係話咧而家乜都唔使做啦，唔使再去到即係去演出嘅意思就係話其實呢個先至係嗰個即係最精彩嗰個部分，先至係最精華嘅部分。
And the Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas they put a lot of attention on the Rasa Lila, but especially on this chapter.
咁所以高爾人以我嘅靈性先師咧，佢哋咧係好重視咧呢一章嘅，尤其是尤其是呢一篇嘅裏面嘅呢一章。
Srila Jiva Goswami, I just read, he quotes the entire chapter within his Priti Sandarbha, one of his 6 treatises.
咁 Srila Jiva Goswami 咧，佢係有呢一個嘅6本嘅呢個著作啦。咁咧佢係引用咗呢一章整個章節嘅內容。
And the final verse of this chapter is quoted 4 times in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
The last
final verse.
咁呢一章嘅最後一節咧係引用咗4次嘅，喺永恆的主宰體嚟經裏面。
The meter of these verses is special.
咁呢一啲嘅詩節咧，佢哋嗰個音節啊，嗰個節律咧係好特別嘅。
As we will see, the whole Bhagavatam uses, I think it's something like 25 different meters.
咁整部嘅《gopyaḥ》咧係有用到25種唔同種類嘅呢啲節律。
And the meter of these verses is called vrajaḥ.
咁我哋而家會讀嘅呢一章嘅裏面嘅呢啲詩嘅節律咧就叫做
and which is a particular type of dṛśyatāṁ. Dṛśyatāṁ.
咁係一種特別嘅節律嚟嘅。
Okay, I won't go into details. Most of the verses we read, like Bhagavad Gita, that's called ūcuḥ. Sarvanarnam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja.
咁我哋喺《國家梵歌》裏面讀嘅詩節咧，大部分咧就係呢個咁樣嘅節律嘅 ūcuḥ。
And dṛśyatāṁ is, for example, vasam sijirnani yatavihaya navani grinati naroparam, etc.
咁頭先馬克所念嗰個就係呢一章裏面嗰個詩嘅嗰個節律。
But you'll see that this is a bit different.
咁咧，但係咧呢個咧係有啲特別嘅。我頭先嗰個係國家梵歌。
Okay, here we go. Verse number 1. Are we ready?
我哋第一節詩，大家準備好未？
Gopya ūcuḥ jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
There's a pause after adhikam. Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Śrayata Indirā śaśvad atra
Śrayata Indirā śaśvad
dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Tvayi dṛṛtāsavas tvaṁ vicinvate.
Tvayi dṛṛtāsavas tvaṁ vicinvate.
Very good. Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Jayati te dhikaṁ
janmanā vraja. Śrayata Indirā śaśvat atra
Śrayata Indirā
śaśvat atra dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Tvayi dṛṛtāsavas tvaṁ vicinvate.
Tvayi dṛṛtāsavas
tvaṁ vicinvate. Anyone else want to try it?
Jayati te dhikaṁ
janmanā vraja.
śrayata Indirā śaśvat
Śrayata
tvayi dṛśyatāṁ vicinvate.
Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Śrayata Indirā śaśvat trahi.
Śrayata Indirā śaśvat trahi.
Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Tvayi dṛśyatāvas tvaṁ vicinvate.
Tvayi dṛśyatāvas tvaṁ vicinvate. Who else wants to try? Gopyaḥ. Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja. Śrayata Indirā śaśvat dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās. Tvayi dṛśyatāṁ tvaṁ vicinvate. Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja. Śrayata Indirā śaśvad. Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās. Tvayi dṛśyatāvas tvaṁ vicinvate. No? Good.
Gopya ūcuḥ. Jayati te dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Jayati te
dhikaṁ janmanā vraja.
Śrayata Indirā śaśvat atra.
Śrayata Indirā śaśvat.
Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Dayita dṛśyatāṁ dikṣu tāvakās.
Tvayi dṛśyatāvas tvaṁ vicinvate.
Tvayi dṛśyatāvas tvaṁ vicinvate.
Okay. Gopyaḥ ūcuḥ. The gopīs said, Jayati is glorious. Te, your. Adhikam, exceedingly. Janmanā, by the birth. Vraja, the land of Vraja. Śrayate is residing. Indirā, Lakṣmī, the goddess of fortune.
幸運女神 Lakṣmī。
śaśvat, perpetually.
永久地。
atra, here.
這裏。
he, indeed.
事實上。
dayita, oh beloved.
親愛的人啊。
dṛśyatāṁ, may you be seen.
請展示你自己。
dikṣu, in all directions.
從四面八方。
tāvakās, your devotees.
你的奉獻者們。
tvayi, for your sake.
為了你。
dṛtāsavas, sustain.
維持。
asava, your life heirs.
他們的生命之氣。
tvāṁ, for you.
為你。
vicinvate, they are searching.
他們在尋找。
Translation and purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The gopīs said, O beloved, your birth in the land of Vraja has made it exceedingly glorious, and thus Indirā, the goddess of fortune, always resides here. It is only for your sake that we, your devoted servants, maintain our lives. We have been searching everywhere for you, so please show yourself to us.
啲文由 A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada 對隨者所提供。黃牛姑娘們說：親愛的人啊，你降生在 Vraja 大地上，使它格外光榮。幸運女神 Indirā 因而永遠住在這裡，僅僅是為了你，我們你忠誠的女僕，才維持我們的生命。我們到處找你，所以請向我們展示你自己。
Purport: Those who are familiar with the art of chanting Sanskrit verses will be able to appreciate the especially exquisite Sanskrit poetry of this chapter. Specifically, the poetic meter of the verses is extraordinarily beautiful, and also, for the most part, in each line, the first and seventh syllables begin with the same consonant as do the second syllables of all four lines.
要指精通吟誦梵文詩的人，都會感受到這一章的梵文詩格外精美，特別是他們的韻律尤其優美。不僅如此，大多數詩節第一行的第一個和第七個音節都以同樣的子音為開始，而所有第四行的第二個音節也如此。
That's it. Just to briefly explain what they're explaining in purport about the repetition of syllables.
咁我好簡單咁樣去到講解一下咧，喺要旨裏邊咧所去到講到嘅呢一啲嘅音節韻律。
So if we look at the first line, it says jayati te adhikam janmanā vraja. So it starts with ja, and then again in the second phrase it starts with ja.
咁咧，所以我哋睇一睇第一行嘅時候，咁咧佢第一個字咧係 J 音啊嘛，然之後咧去到中間咧第七個音節咧都係 J 音嚟。
And then the second line starts with sh, and again the second phrase is sh.
咁所以我哋睇第二行嘅時候咧，第一段咧 即係第一部分咧，佢就係 sharp 呢個開音，呢個字音開始嘅。去到中間嗰度咧，第二段嗰度咧又係 sharp 開始嘅。
And the third line starts with da, and the second phrase is di.
咁第三行咧開始嘅時候咧就 da 呢個音，中間咧就係 di。
And we get last line tva and tva.
咁所以第四行咧，佢個開始嘅音咧就係 twa， 中間咧亦都係 twa 開始。
And furthermore, the second syllable in each line is the same, ya.
然之後咧，每一行嘅第二個音節都係以一 Y 字。
Jayati, śrayata, dayita, tvayi. So these are kind of fun things that poets, experts in Sanskrit poetry look out for.
咁所以嗰啲精通呢啲梵文詩節啦，專門研究梵文詩節嘅人咧，佢哋就會覺得好有趣、好玩。
And the experts, they will look very carefully at these to make sure it's just right.
咁所以嗰啲專家咧會好小心啦，去到確保咧呢啲音節咧係正確嘅。
You have this also in, I think, Chinese classical poetry. They're also looking to get everything just right.
咁喺我哋中國嘅古詩裏面咧，都有類似嘅呢一啲嘅韻律音節嘅。
And if there's a fault, they will say, "Ha! This has a fault."
佢哋會揾嗰啲我哋叫平仄啊。咁如果係平仄錯咗嘅話咧，佢就話錯咗。
In the prayers of Shukadeva Goswami in Canto 2, Chapter 4, preparing to respond to Maharaj Parikshit with the Bhagavatam, he offers several prayers.
咁喺呢一個《國家雅談》嘅第2篇第4章裏面咧，Shukadeva Goswami 咧準備咧去到回答 Parikshit Maharaj 嘅呢個提問啦。喺佢回答之前咧，佢有一系列嘅呢啲嘅禱文獻上。
And in, I think it's the second to the last prayer, he says, he prays to the Lord, "May my words be decorated, may they be ornamented by your presence."
咁所以喺呢一段嘅禱文裏邊，尾二嗰一段啦，Shukadeva Goswami 咧就講到咧，佢話希望咧我所講嘅説話咧係咧你嘅臨在咧係好似去到裝飾我即係所講嘅説話。
And in that verse, he's praying just as you, O Lord, create the universe and create all the bodies in the universe, and then you enter into the bodies of everyone. So similarly, please enter into the words of my speech.
咁所以Shukadeva Goswami 咧講到咧，主咧去到創造呢一個宇宙啦，然之後咧進入咧每一個宇宙嘅身體啦，再進入每一個生物體嘅身體裏面啦，佢就祈求咧主咧係進入佢所講以下落嚟咧所講嘅説話當中。
But he uses the word alankrishta, which alankara means ornament, but it also means poetic ornament.
咁呢個 alamkara 佢嘅意思咧，一方面咧係指呢一個嘅裝飾啦，另外一方面咧係講呢一個好似詩一般嘅呢啲韻律裝係。
Yeah. So I just mentioned all this about poetry because sometimes we kind of forget that the Bhagavatam is poetry.
咁我想即係特別強調啦，呢一啲詩裏面嘅元素啦，因為我哋有時可能忘記其實咧《國家雅談》係一首詩嚟嘅。
And it's high class poetry.
而且係非常之高級嘅。
And like poetry, good poetry expresses deep truth in a way that ordinary language cannot do.
咁所以一啲非常之優美嘅詩啦，佢能夠咧係去到演繹咧呢一啲好深層嘅一啲嘅真理啦，而其他嘅語言咧係冇辦法做到嘅。
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that the acharyas, they take great interest in this chapter. So I thought we could look briefly at some of this attention. Baladevidya Bhushana. Well, he's not directly referring to this chapter, but I want to mention something from him.
咁我頭先講到咧，以往嘅靈性先知咧，佢哋係好強調咧呢一章嘅，咁我就會引用咧Baladevidya Bhushana 裏面佢所講到嘅係會算一章。
Yes, Baladevidya Bhushana. He was a disciple of, who knows? Vishwanath, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur.
咁所以Baladeva Bhushana 咧，其實咧佢係 Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur 嘅門徒嚟嘅。
And he's maybe most famous for his commentary on Vedanta Sutra.
咁佢最出名咧就係佢對呢一個Vedanta Sutra 嘅評注。
But he wrote one other book. Well, he wrote several things, but one book he wrote is called the Sahitya Kaumudi.
咁佢寫咗其一啲書啦，其中一本咧叫做 Sahitya
Kaumudi.
Sahitya Kaumudi.
Sahitya means literature.
Sahitya 嘅意思就係文學。
And Kaumudi, I'm not sure. Something to do with joy.
Kaumudi 應該可能同快樂啦、開心啦、喜樂啦有關。
Anyway, it's an analysis. It's a very elaborate analysis of Sanskrit, the science of Sanskrit poetry.
咁所以其實係一個好詳細嘅解釋到咧呢一個嘅梵文嘅詩。
So, in one verse of this, or one statement passage, he's talking about this vipralamba, this mood of separation within Madhurya.
咁喺其中一段裏面咧，佢提到咧呢一種嘅分離之情。
And he says there's 4 different varieties of this separation.
咁所以佢講到咧呢個分離之情咧分做4種嘅。
So this gets a little technical, but you may find it interesting.
咁可能有少少技術性啦，但係大家可能會覺得呢樣好有趣。
It shows how rich our tradition actually is. People think we just, these Hare Krishna, they just chant Hare Krishna. Nothing is there. No, there's so much.
咁其實去到展示咧，我哋嘅傳統咧係幾咁豐富，因為有啲人可能會覺得我哋淨係唱 Hare Krishna 啦，然之後就乜乜都冇啦，淨係得唱 Hare Krishna。
Yes, we chant Hare Krishna, and because chanting Hare Krishna is so profound, even after we study all of this about Sanskrit poetics, in the end, what do? We chant Hare Krishna.
咁所以唱咗 Hare Krishna 咧非常之有力量嘅，就算我哋讀晒呢一啲嘅點識晒呢啲梵文嘅詩節啦、韻律啦，但係最後我哋都係繼續去到念咗 Hare Krishna。
So the first variety of vipralamba or separation is called purva raga.
咁咧第一種嘅呢一種嘅分離之情咧係稱為
Purva raga. Purva raga. Raga, what is raga?
Raga 嘅意思係乜嘢咧
Raga can mean attachment, it can mean attraction, it can mean passion.
咁 Raga 嘅意思咧可以係解作呢一個嘅吸引啦，去到着迷啦。
And purva means before or preliminary.
咁 purva 嘅意思咧就係之前嘅。
So this is the mood of the lover in anticipation of meeting, has not yet met the beloved.
咁所以呢一種嘅分離咧，就係佢仲未見到個愛人之前嗰種嘅期待。
She's heard about him, or it's like Rukmini hears about Krishna, and she decides, he's my man.
咁所以咧呢一種咧就係佢見到個即係愛人之前嗰種嘅期待咧，就好似個 Queenie 咁樣，佢聽咗好多關於 Krishna 嘅事蹟啦，跟住佢心裏面就諗，佢就係我要揾嗰位啦，即係就心有所屬啦已經。
Then the second type is called mana. Mana.
咁咧第二種咧就係呢一種叫 mana。
Or in Hindi we would say man.
咁喺
Without the short A.
印度文裏面就叫 man。
Man can be translated as devotional anger.
咁呢個 mana 咧
Devotional loving anger.
可以被翻譯成為呢一個奉愛嘅呢一種嘅憤怒。
This is when the lover is angry at the beloved for being neglected, especially for being neglected.
咁尤其是可能其中一位愛人啦，俾佢另外一半咧係忽略啦，咁佢有呢一種嘅即係好嬲嘅生氣。
So this happens all the time because Krishna he seems to be a quite fickle lover. He's off visiting Chandravali, but we shouldn't even mention her name in polite company.
咁所以 Krishna 係好點講，好似浪子咁樣，即係停唔到落嚟嘅，所以會發生呢一啲事，佢哋可能有時會嬲佢啊。
And then
Chandravali。哦，右翼嘅 gopī。
Yeah, she's the rival gopy.
咁佢係另外一邊嘅另外一個陣營嚟嘅。
Yeah, she's in the wrong party. As I said, it's all politics.
咁所以同埋姑娘之間都會有呢啲政治嘅，有左派右派。
Chandravali. Yeah. So, and then, yes, Srimati Radharani, she finds out, she's upset. And that being upset, that's called mana.
咁所以當Srimati Radharani 發現嘅時候咧，咁佢就唔開心啦。
And it usually ends up that Krishna has to come and beg forgiveness.
跟住然之後 Krishna 就要去到請求佢嘅原諒。
And sometimes he's down on his knees pleading with Radharani.
咁有時 Krishna 甚至會下跪啦，然之後去乞求Radharani原諒佢啦，Radharani就會昂高個頭。
So there's Purva Raga, there's Mana.
咁有呢個 Purva Raga 啦，呢一個嘅即係期待啦，跟住有呢個 Man。
And then there's Pravasa. Pravasa means living away. There's already been meeting, and there's already been being together, but then by some circumstance, maybe the hero has to go off to war, for example, and the lover is left.
咁所以第三種嘅呢個分離之情咧叫做 pravasa， 意思即係話咧，其實佢哋已經相遇啦，已經喺埋一齊啦，但之後咧就要分開，就好似咧有啲男士咧，佢哋要上戰場咧，同佢哋嘅愛人分開。
And then the fourth variety of vipralambha is called prema vichitya.
咁第四種咧呢個分離之情咧就叫做 prema vichitya。
Yeah, vichitya. This is translated here as mental confusion due to love.
咁呢度咧被翻譯為咧係呢一種嘅思想上面嘅一種嘅錯亂啦，就係因為愛。
Yeah. So I mention this because this chapter, chapter 31, it's said to be essentially the third category, pravasa.
咁咧喺呢一個章裏面咧，佢所表達咗種嘅分離之情咧，尤其是係佢所表達嘅就係第三類呢個 pravasa， 即係嗰種已經相聚啦，跟住之後又要再分開。
Because they've already met in the beginning of chapter 29. They've been together, they were dancing for some time, but then Krishna disappears.
咁所以因為喺第29章裏面咧，木牛姑娘同埋 Krishna 咧，其實佢哋已經相遇啦，跟住跳咗一陣舞，然之後咧 Krishna 就消失咗，佢哋就分開咗。
He disappears, and then the gopis go searching for him.
咁所以 Krishna 消失咗之後咧，木牛姑娘咧就去到想揾翻 Krishna。
Which we discussed yesterday, chapter 30. They're searching, not finding.
咁所以我哋琴日已經討論到咧第30章咧，木牛姑娘去到尋找 Krishna 啦，揾，最後都係揾唔到。
One.
Search.
One. And it's become dark, and so there's no more point in going further. And so now they've come, they're sitting down on the bank.
因為當時咧已經天黑啦，所以乜都睇唔到啦，於是佢哋已經冇辦法再揾落去啦，於是就坐咗喺janmanā河嘅河畔嗰度。
And as I mentioned yesterday, it's significant that they haven't decided, oh well, I guess I'll just go home.
咁我琴日講到咧好特別嘅地方咧，佢哋咧並冇諗過話，算啦，咁我哋翻屋企啦。
You know, they might decide, oh well, we tried, we couldn't find him. I guess we better go home, like Krishna advised us.
所以咧，佢哋並冇咁樣諗，佢哋並冇話算啦，揾唔到啦，可能我哋要跟翻 Krishna 之前嘅提議啦，我哋翻屋企啦。
But no, they've committed themselves that really they can't go back home.
咁喺呢度咧，佢哋展示出就係佢哋真係唔可以再翻屋企嘅。
Now, a couple of things. One is about the mood. I said it's pravasa, so they've become separated. But within this, then you get elements of the other varieties of vicinvate as well.
咁所以咧呢度咧，外姑娘咧，雖然佢哋處於一個pravasa 嘅一個分離之情啦，但係呢一個分離之情裏面咧，裏面仲有其他嘅種類嘅呢啲分離之情喺裏邊。
So according to Jiva Goswami, this first verse of this chapter is an example of purva raga.
咁根據 Jiva Goswami 咧，我哋閲讀嘅第一節詩咧，其實佢裏面咧係喺呢個分離之情啦，裏面咧仲有一個咧就我哋頭先講嗰種期待嘅嗰種嘅分離之情。
Now it says gopya ūcuḥ, the gopis spoke, but the chapter is traditionally referred to as gopyaḥ, the songs of the gopis.
咁呢一章咧又被稱為咧叫做 gopyaḥ， 意思咧即係木牛姑娘之歌。
And the acharyas tell us that individual gopis are singing each one of these verses, representing all the other gopis.
咁所以以往嘅靈性先師咧講到咧，每一位木牛姑娘咧去到唱呢一啲歌啦，其實佢哋每唱一個咧，其實佢哋代表住整班嘅木牛姑娘嘅。
And it occurs to me that the meter, this vrajaḥ meter, this kind of bouncing jayati, dhikaṁ, janmanā, vraja, Indirā, śaśvad. It strikes me initially as a little strange, as a form of poetry for expressing a mood of separation and longing.
咁一開始嘅時候會覺得呢一個韻律咧係比較特別嘅，因為咧呢一個嘅韻律咧用嚟咧去表達呢一種嘅分離之情。
But maybe it depends on precisely how it would be sung in classical Indian music. I don't know.
可能印度嘅傳統音樂有另外一種嘅，即係唱嘅唱法又唔一樣。
But another thing strikes me is this meter makes me think, yes, the gopis, they're very young. And these are like practically children, and they're singing kind of a children's song.
咁所以令我覺得呢班牧民姑娘其實真係好細個，佢哋唱歌嘅時候就好似細路女咁樣。
So even though it's deep emotion, in fact, it doesn't get deeper and intense. Still, they're like children, and Krishna is said to be also very young. Sometimes it's said he was only 7 years old at this time, maybe a bit older. In any case, this meter kind of reminds of that sense of childhood, I think. And therefore innocence. This is the point.
咁所以整個韻律咧，俾我感覺就係Krishna 啦，同埋牧牛姑娘咧，都係好天真無邪，佢哋好似佢哋童年嘅一個展現。
And of course, this is a big issue. People who find fault in Krishna's pastimes, they especially point to the Rasa Lila.
咁有啲人佢會去到批評啦，Krishna 嘅逍遙時光，尤其是係呢一段嘅 Rasa Lila 嘅時。
They say, oh, how terrible! He's supposed to be establishing Dharma. He is supposed to be the Supreme Lord, and what is he doing? He's dancing with young women who are other men's wives.
咁所以有啲人就會抨擊啦 Krishna 啦，佢就去 Krishna 咧應該咧係去到建立呢個宗教嘅原則咧，佢係至尊主啦，但係佢點解會做出呢一啲嘢嘅咧？同其他人嘅妻子咧去到跳舞。
But no, this is misunderstanding.
但其實咁樣講係一個誤解嚟嘅。
First of all, whose wives are they actually?
首先第一個問題就係究竟佢哋係真正係邊一個嘅妻子咧？
They're actually Krishna's wives.
其實咧，佢哋全部都係 Krishna 嘅妻子嚟嘅。
They're Krishna's eternal consorts.
所以佢哋係 Krishna 永恆嘅伴侶。
And beyond that, it's mentioned in an earlier chapter of the Rasa Lila. Krishna is Atma Rama. He's perfectly self-satisfied.
除此之外咧，喺一個Rasa 嘅逍遙時光裏面咧，描述過咧 Krishna 咧，佢係呢一個叫做Atma Rama， 意思咧即係話咧佢係自我滿足嘅。
So it's not that he's satisfying some lusty desire by dancing with the gopis.
所以咧佢同呢一啲嘅牧牛姑娘跳舞咧，並唔係滿足任何呢一啲色欲。
And there is this sense of innocence.
同一時間咧係有一種嘅天真啦，展示出嚟。
And therefore we can say it is so sweet.
咁所以係好甜嘅。
It is madhurya, through and through. Too much sweet.
太甜啦。
In his book on the Rasa Panchadhyaya, Garuda Prabhu goes through, he gives a full translation of the whole 5 chapters, then he has notes for the verses, and some of the verses he gives detailed notes.
咁Garuda Prabhu喺佢嘅書裏面咧，佢有翻譯晒咧整個5章啦，然之後咧某啲詩詞咧佢落咗一啲嘅筆記喺裏面。
So the first verse, the first word of this after gopya ūcuḥ is jayati, and it literally means to conquer or excel.
咁咧呢個字jayati 咧，佢嘅意思咧就係話去到征服啦，或者咧係去到超越。
So they're praising Vraja, Vrindavan. They're saying Vrindavan excels. It's the best place in the world.
所以咧佢哋咧係講到咧Vraja 咧呢一個地方，佢哋讚美緊 Vraja 呢一個地方，佢係超越晒所有其他嘅地方，係最好嘅地方嚟。
It's the best place in the world, and it's such a great place that Lakṣmī Devi herself lives here.
咁所以咧呢個地方咧係整個 地球咧最好嘅地方，整個世界最好嘅地方，連幸運女神咧都住喺呢一度嘅。
And it's explained that normally Lakṣmī is being served, but in Vraja she is serving.
咁所以一般嚟講咧，Lakṣmī咧係被服務嘅，但係喺 Vraja 咧佢係服務。
Yeah. And the request, the theme of the whole chapter, of course, is dṛśyatāṁ. Please let us see you.
咁整個詩詞裏面咧，佢講到就係請讓我哋能夠見到你。
Or more literally, may you be seen.
或者請你去到，讓到你能夠被看見。
But it's explained, it can mean the kind of the other way around. Please look at us.
另外一個方式去到表達就係請你望住我哋。
So look at us, how distressed we are.
你睇下我哋幾咁絕望、痛苦。
We were together and you disappeared, and now, we're hopeless case.
我哋本來喺埋一齊嘅，然之後你就消失咗啦。我哋而家真係無望絕望。
Also, we can notice that this verse and all the others are addressed to Krishna.
咁呢一節詩裏面咧，佢其實望姑娘咧係向 Krishna 所講嘅。
So, but Krishna is absent.
但係 Krishna 咧係唔在場。
So they're speaking to Krishna, who's not present.
所以佢哋對 Krishna 講呢一番説話咧，但係 Krishna 咧並唔在場。
So it's all in the second person. You're addressing directly. Yeah.
咁所以係直接咁樣去到同 Krishna 去講呢一番説話。
Actually, it's called sambodhana, to address someone directly.
咁係直接咁樣去到同嗰位人嗰個人去到講説話。
Sambodhana. Which is the form that we have when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra. We're calling to Krishna, O Krishna.
咁所以當我哋去到念誦 Hare Krishna 嘅時候，都係用同一種嘅方式，就係我哋直接去到同 Krishna 去到同佢交談啊 ，O Krishna。
And they're giving an argument why it is Krishna should should look at them or show himself.
咁呢一節詩裏面咧，王姑娘咧就去講咗一個理據啦。點解咧 Krishna 咧應該咧去展示佢自己啦，同埋咧去到望王姑娘。
Says the only reason we're alive is for you.
咁點解要佢哋要請 Krishna 見佢哋咧？就因為佢哋唯一生存嘅目的咧，就係為咗 Krishna。
dṛtāsavas, our life air is only being sustained for you.
咁所以佢講到唯一能夠維持我哋生命嘅咧，就係你。
Yeah. So they're singing, they're glorifying Krishna in so many ways, and they're also they're making an argument.
咁所以佢哋一路去到唱歌啦，唱住關於 Krishna 嘅事啦，然之後一路榮耀讚美 Krishna 啦，但係亦都咧去到拋出呢一啲嘅理據。
So they've already given they gave arguments in the beginning of chapter 29 when Krishna was saying, "What are you doing here? Go back home." Then they give arguments and they persuade Krishna, "Yes, okay, stay and let's dance."
咁所以喺第29章裏面咧，王姑娘咧已經咧俾出咗佢哋嘅理據啦，因為佢哋當佢哋遇見 Krishna 嘅時候 ，Krishna 問佢哋點解你哋會嚟呢度啊？點解喺呢度啊？咁王姑娘講出個理據咧，然之後 Krishna 咧係被說服咧，同佢哋一齊跳舞。
But now they have to do some more persuasion.
但係而家咧，佢哋咧要再攞出更加多嘅理據。
Krishna, come back. Why should I come back?
Krishna 翻嚟啦，點解我要翻嚟啊
Because of this and 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 this. So many reasons you should come back.
咁有好多嘅原因，因為呢個，所以咧你要好多原因要翻嚟。
And so Krishna will be persuaded, as we know.
咁我哋知道 Krishna 最終都係會被說服翻嚟。
But meanwhile, in this whole chapter, we're being sort of held in suspense. Will Krishna come back or not?
咁所以喺呢一度咧，其實都仲有一個懸念嘅，就係、究竟 Krishna 會唔會翻嚟咧？
Shall we? No, it's already 9 o'clock. Maybe I should stop here. We have a long day today. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should ask if anyone has a question. That's an idea. A question. I was just getting started. I was thinking we could go through the whole chapter. We only got into verse number 1. Yes.
Regarding the raga of the verses,
Yeah.
when we are chanting the verses, is it also we are relating with the emotion that the verses carry, like when we are chanting like the Bhagavad Gita? So is there any specific emotion?
What's the mood for chanting, for us to chant the verses? Yeah, that's a nice question.
咁你講好嘅問題咧，就係、當我哋去到念誦唱誦呢一啲詩節嘅時候，你應該懷住一個點樣嘅心水咧？
I would say it's a mood of listening in on the mood of the gopīs.
咁就係一種 listening in the mood of
Listening into, it's like we're like this, we're hearing and we listen in.
OK， 咁我個心水咧就係、我哋去到聆聽啦，呢個母牛姑娘所講嘅説話啦。
And then you can chant them also in a mood of pleasing Krishna, because Krishna will be pleased to be reminded of the mood of the gopīs.
咁另外一個心水咧就係、我哋去到懷住取悅 Krishna 嘅呢個心水啦，因為當 Krishna 咧聽到母牛姑娘嘅呢一啲嘅分離之情啊，呢一啲嘅説話嘅時候咧，佢都會得到取悅。
One of the verses, I think it's in this chapter, is quite celebrated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yes, here it is. Verse number 9. There's a whole lila of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in relation to verse number 9.
咁永恆的主宰坦耶經裏面咧，同呢一個裏面其中有一章咧，佢裏面同呢一個嘅第31章第9節詩咧有關係嘅關聯嘅。
tāvakās mritam tapta jivanam kaviliritam kalmashavam shravanamandalam Srimad-Bhagavatam bhuvigrinantiye bhuvigajana. When King Prataparudra chanted this verse while he was massaging Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet, while Lord Chaitanya was resting during the Ratha-yatra.
咁所以當時咧係主宰坦耶咧，佢係喺呢個彈車節裏面啦，咁咧佢就休息緊啦。咁Janmanā嗰度嘅一個國王啦，叫做 Prataparudra 咧，佢係咧按摩住主宰坦耶嘅蓮花足，就一路按摩咧，一路唱住呢一節詩。
Prataparudra was in disguise as a Brahmin, so that Lord Chaitanya would allow him to approach him.
咁咧當時呢一位國王咧Prataparudra 咧，佢係咧將自己咧冒充咧成為一個嘅婆羅門，因為佢咁樣咧先至可以咧親近到主宰坦耶。
And he was chanting various verses, including this one.
咁佢當時咧係念誦有啲其他嘅詩啦，其中一節咧就係呢一節詩啦。
The last line is Bhuvigrinantiye Buddhidajana. Buddhidajana, persons who are most beneficent. They spread this message of the Lord.
咁所以最後嗰一句咧講到嗰啲咧傳播守神信息嘅人咧，無疑係最慷慨嘅人嚟嘅。
So this is the gopīs singing to Krishna.
咁所以呢一節詩咧係母牛姑娘咧係向住 Krishna 唱嘅。
Who is absent.
但 Krishna 唔在場喎。
And now Lord Chaitanya is hearing Prataparudra chant this verse.
咁呢個時候咧，主唱他爺咧係聽到呢一個國王咧係向佢唱呢一首詩。
And Lord Chaitanya jumps up and he shouts, Purita, Purita!
咁然之後，主唱他爺聽到之後咧就跳咗起嚟啦，然之後咧佢就講
Purita, Purita
Purita
means beneficent, means generous.
咁 Purita 呢個意思咧就係解最慷慨、最慈善嘅。
So he was enlightened to hear this because he's also in the mood of the gopis in separation from Krishna. And that's what the whole atra is about.
咁所以當時咧，因為主唱太爺咧佢係有呢一種嘅心緒咧，佢都係好似母牛姑娘咁樣咧，同 Krishna 分離嘅呢一種心緒啦，所以聽到呢一節詩嘅時候咧，佢變得非常之激動。
What is the atra? It's the gopis going to Kurukshetra to meet Krishna. They see Krishna and he's all dressed up like a prince and there's all these elephants and soldiers and so on, and they go, no, this won't work. You have to come with us. You have to come to Vrindavan. And so they pull his chariot to go to Vrindavan.
咁呢個亦都係整個Vraja 背後即係嘅含義啦，就係當母牛姑娘咧去到 Kurukshetra 見到 Krishna 着晒成個裝束就好似王子一樣啦，然之後有啲大笨象啊、戰車啊，於是佢覺得格格不入啦，佢就覺得佢哋就拉住 Krishna 嗰個戰車啦，就想帶佢咧翻去 Vrindavan。
Yeah, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of Vraja.
咁所以主唱太爺咧係 Krishna 啦，但係咧佢係懷住 Srimati Radharani 嘅心緒。
So, what kind of mood to chant these verses in? Well, I would say that King Prataparudra's mood would be a good example for us.
咁我哋可以參考啦，呢個Prataparudra 呢一個君王，佢當時嘅嗰種心緒啦，去到念誦呢一啲嘅詩詞。
It's a mood of service to the Lord, who is in the mood of being a servant of the Lord.
咁所以呢一種嘅心緒咧就係一個僕人嘅心緒，服務即係服務主嘅呢個嘅心緒啦。而呢一位主咧，佢係處於一種僕人服務人嘅心緒。
We always give our translators a good workout. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow with the Bhagavatam Rasa Panchadhyaya. So, Grantara Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.